There are certainly some things that I wish I had known before starting any sort of career. And so I'm going to impart this advice on you, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes that I did, or now you're able to set yourself for more success as you start your career, start your profession. Basically, this was what I would tell my younger self. As someone who is so eager to prove herself, who really wanted to perform at her best from the very moment I hit my desk, is learning when and how to push back. Now, you have to know when to pick your battles, and you also have to have a really good understanding of what exactly is being asked here. First of all, you need to know how much is on your plate. You need to know how much you can take on in terms of your projects, etc. And you need to know when it's appropriate to push back and how to push back. Sometimes you'll get a fairly unreasonable ask within a very short amount of time. If you know this is not possible, like there's no way you're going to get this done, you have another thing you need to have delivered within the next 3 hours, and this other thing came in last minute and also needs to be done at that time, you need to be able to communicate that, or at least open up discussion to your team and say, hey, this is what's on my plate. Not impossible, but it will be very difficult for me to do all of these things within the same exact timeline that was assigned. Can we please discuss on how to prioritize this? Now, when I was first starting, I was so eager to do everything that I could that I wouldn't say no. And I made that mistake, and one, it burnt me out because I was in such a rush. I was very stressed to finish things. And another part is like my team wouldn't have known unless I told them, especially if you're working amongst various different teams. So making sure that one, you're able to communicate, and it's better sometimes to over communicate than under communicate, especially when it comes to your bandwidth, comes to your capacity and general team resources. And then two, knowing when you should say no and like really push back if it's something that is very unrealistic, and making sure you have the rationale of why. Let's say someone gives me a project and they're like, you're taking this is when it's due, like work with these people on it. And if I know for a fact that I cannot be taking this, there is a way to really structure that and say, hi, like thank you so much for this opportunity. These are actually the current projects that I'm working on, as well as the timeline for it. It seems like based on my current capacity, I do not have any extra bandwidth to take on this additional project, but thank you very much for thinking of me. And if they have an issue with that, then that comes up for a broader discussion. But make sure to protect your own time, especially if you are already getting crushed or you're already working very hard and you know this extra thing will push you over the edge. Another thing I wish I knew is to document everything. What I mean by this is if there's a meeting and there are actionables to do, if there are some key discussions, I would make sure to note that down. And sometimes you're taking these notes for more senior people, but think of it for yourself. First of all, this helps you keep track of what needs to be done for you personally. I typically like to have a section that is titled Key Priorities, Actionables, and so that is also a reminder for me of what to do. And if this is something that you send out to people, this is also helpful because a lot of people change their minds. I've had scenarios where I end up putting something together and they say, why did you do it in this way? And I said it was discussed on the call. But because no one was really diligently taking notes, or maybe that part was missed, some key part or key change that we wanted, having this documented, making sure that we're aligned on it, and we can always refer back to these notes or emails. Additionally, it's also very helpful for when you're looking up how to do something in the future. For example, if there's a recurring task and I've done it beforehand, I know that I can reference something in order to be able to replicate that again, especially if a certain amount of time has passed. This is also another way to benefit yourself, but in the future, if you're writing your resume, if you're writing down a description for what a project that you did, or even if you're talking in an interview about what you had done in the past within your role, within a specific project, you can be able to pinpoint and talk about certain details rather than say it's already been a year and a half has passed since you've done that specific thing and you don't quite really remember how to articulate it or put it into detail because you've already forgotten or there's been so much stuff that's happened since then. So it's really helpful because one, it keeps everyone on track in the present day and everyone is aligned, or they can respond back to the email or notes and say, hey, this was my understanding of it, and you can quickly clarify on the spot. Or two, in the longer term, it's really helpful for you or your team to go back and reference, whether or not it's for future projects or for your future discussion points as you're talking about it on your resume or your future interviews. Especially when it comes to project-based stuff, like noting down what I liked about it, who I worked on it with, and also just figuring out what exactly it was. For example, if I woke up that day and I was really dreading it, why was I so not looking forward to the day? Is it because I'm working on a project that's very tedious or is in a space that I don't really care about or don't really like? Or, why am I more excited nowadays? So being able to keep track and keeping a continuous list of this is like what I'm working on, this is how I feel about it, and do I have an inherent interest about it? Or even certain situations too, if you document some of your conversations or discussions with people or have some meeting notes, that's really helpful too. Also, if there's something that seems a little off with any of your peers or your coworkers, documenting that as well, or at least keeping a mental note if it's a recurring thing of like someone's being particularly rude or unprofessional towards you, that was sent by email or that was said over the phone, that's really helpful for you to know as well. Hey, maybe this is something that I should be more cognizant about. Another thing that I wish I knew earlier on was to take a careful look at what the people above you are and also next to you are doing. So what I'm talking about is people more senior to you as well as your peers. One way I found out that, a career in this specific industry was not for me was I was taking a look carefully at what my associate was doing. I was looking at what my VP had to do as well as my director or managing director. Now, if I couldn't see myself doing their role, then I knew for me personally, this was not going to be a longer term career. This would help me form my potential action of, hey, like maybe I should start recruiting or thinking of recruiting pretty soon. This was helpful for me to really reflect on what it was about what they were doing that I didn't want to do. What was it about my current role that I liked or didn't like, and how do I compare my experiences with my peers? Additionally, it's just really helpful to have other friends and other coworkers who are within the same experience level that you can talk about your experiences with and also share like what type of projects you're working on, because sometimes like they might be doing something really interesting that you might want to try as well. Getting a chance to really see more of what is allowed in your role. For example, that's how I got onto a project that was in a sector that I wasn't really familiar with. I had spoken to someone, I was like, hey, I know you're working on this, like, can you tell me a little bit more about it? And having that camaraderie too of just being very open, very communicative of what everyone is working on, and also just sharing a bunch of like stories and skills that you're able to gain throughout the workday. This is your career. Okay, people are going to judge you for leaving. People are going to judge you for wherever you go to anyways, or they don't even care at all. And for those people who, let's say you know you're going to pivot to something else, and if they're not happy for you that you're going to something that's more aligned with your career interest in general, then that's not really someone you want to work with anyways. Now that I'm a few years removed from like my first analyst job, as I look at someone who left and went to do something else, I'm like excited for them as long as they're excited. Maybe they found a company that has a better suited culture for them. Maybe they found like an industry that they actually have always been curious about and always wanted to try. This is your career. You shouldn't stay in something just because you don't want to disappoint the people in your group. It's going to happen regardless. Like turnover is inevitable, and you don't want to be stuck at a job that you really dislike just because you don't want to look bad to other people, or you're just like so used to being comfortable, or you just don't want to let the team down. As bad as it sounds, they will find someone to replace you. Like you should always go towards what you personally are interested in and where your strengths are. What you're doing as a job right now, you shouldn't feel like you're stuck in forever. And I know I've had this feeling where I feel like I've worked so hard just to get this job. I didn't come this far just to come this far. And I feel like that's a really weird mentality. Like it's already a sunk cost. I learned a lot through that process, and even though a very reputable or prestigious job or something that like is really hard to get into, if I don't like it, I don't like it. And I should just keep that in mind and use that to really guide my future decisions, rather than being like, oh, I got into investment banking, I worked so hard to get here and I don't like it, but I should stay in it because so many people want this job. That is not the right mentality. For some people, it is for them, and I would, go ahead and stay in that job. But my goal for everyone, including myself, is to find their dream job, what you find interesting and what you find valuable. But at the end of the day, it's your career, and you should really not let other people's opinions affect that. If I went from a really prestigious, reputable, like consulting job to a no-name startup and everyone's judging me for it, as long as I know this is what I wanted to do, I have my own reasons and rationale for going there. And also I have no problem if my mind changes and I want to do something else instead. Just being flexible and being able to course correct, staying true to what you want to achieve out of your career, regardless of what anyone else really thinks. And of course, I'm saying to like not burn bridges, but like not letting someone's opinion of like, why would you go to that company, affect you from accepting an offer that you're excited about. This is your life at the end of the day. and care about your opinion more than anyone else's. Another thing is to really show and keep in touch with your mentors. I've been very lucky to have had like mentors throughout my career as well as throughout my education, and one thing that I wish I was better at was keeping in touch with them. I think it's really important to show that gratitude, and sometimes like part of me is like, I have nothing to offer them. Like I can't offer them a referral necessarily, I can't really offer them a job because I'm years younger than they are typically, but just like reaching out to them from time to time to see how they're doing, to just chat about life and chat about career or life goals is really important. That's what I want to be for future young professionals who are just starting off in the career, people who are in college, and that is one of the reasons why I make these videos. I want to be able to give back in that way. For someone who has been largely influenced by very key professionals and individuals, I do wish I had stayed in better touch with them, and I do reach out to them from time to time, but being in different cities, it's a little bit more difficult. But even just like a phone call or a simple text, I would highly suggest doing that. Also, I kind of touched on this before, but don't burn bridges. Industries are very small, and you may never know. Like someone who you've worked with on a junior level, like, you know, they might end up being the boss of or manager of a position that you want to apply for in the future. So always just be very cognizant of like how you're treating people. Like treat everyone like a human being. All of us have our own lives. All of us, you know, are working, but we also have a personal life outside of that. In any case possible, even in like general life, be kind or at least be courteous to people. Don't go out of your way to like seek vengeance or revenge on someone who has wronged you, and just always try to be the better person even if people are treating you poorly at the workplace. You don't want there to be any reason for bad beef, etc. Don't participate in office gossip or drama if you can. Basically, it's a pretty small world. Like we're all connected by 5 or 6 levels or degrees of separation, and you never know when the worlds might collide again. Just a reminder to be at least polite or courteous or kind to people when you can without being taken advantage of, because you never know. The world is big, but it's also fairly small in terms of how social groups kind of run into each other, and I've seen this a few times. So I hope this was really helpful. I really wanted to make this because I feel like this is something that I wish I had known earlier. I want you to be able to have a successful career, just successful, and just be very well equipped with any information. And even if you take this advice with a grain of salt, which, you know, use your own critical thinking to figure out if this advice is for you or not, that at least you had the knowledge of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.